Pete, before we let you go, there's a report out there this afternoon that the Miami Dolphins are the lead team in trade talks with the Houston Texans concerning Deshaun Watson. The report claims the Texans want 3 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks as capital for Watson, and that's according to a team that has since backed out of the trade talks. That would mean, I would think, that the Dolphins are looking at trading Tua Tagovailoa if they're going to be bringing in Deshaun Watson. How feasible is this, Pete? Have you heard anything about the Dolphins being involved deep in trade talks for Deshaun Watson?
No, I have not. And when I was there a couple weeks ago and talked to Brian Flores, he seemed to be encouraged by, Tua Tagovailoa, and he looked like he was a guy that had made growth. I mean, look, if you're going to make this deal, how do you sell that to your fan base? And first and foremost, you have a quarterback who has all these legal issues hanging over his head, and until they're remedied, how do you make that deal? A. B, if you don't make the deal, what message did you just send to your quarterback who you drafted a year ago and who you're trying to make your franchise quarterback? I don't like the makeup of this entire trade possibility. If you could pull it off and get Deshaun Watson, if he didn't have the legal problems and you wanted to make a deal, I get it. But I don't understand it with the legal issues hanging over his head. And so I think this is just out there. If they make a deal for a guy who's got legal issues until they're remedied, that's risky business in my book. I know there's some talk of protecting the draft picks if there is legal issues going forward, but I just think it's a tough thing to sell to your fan base that you made a move to go get a franchise quarterback, and then suddenly he has some more legal issues that are entangled and bring him into a situation where he's going to have to go to court and fight him and everything else that goes along with it. So I just don't think this is a good situation for Miami to be even in the talk or the talks to trade for him. Leave it alone. Play with Tua. See what you have. And then if the legal issues are remedied and he can play next year or when he can play, then maybe make a deal for him.
As we get into the third week of the NFL preseason this afternoon, there are reports that the Houston Texans are involved in trade talks involving Deshaun Watson with the Miami Dolphins. A report claiming the Texans want 3 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. That's according to a team that has since backed out of trade talks for Watson. So now the Dolphins are apparently the front runners for Watson's services. Now, we don't know how feasible such a move would be, but let's talk to our Jonathan Jones about this, our senior NFL insider. JJ, what have you heard about this, about the potential of Deshaun Watson being moved to the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, a little bit, Jeremy, before the start of that Bills-Packers game, I was texting with a source who let me know that the Carolina Panthers were not in the trade, if you want to call it sweepstakes, for Deshaun Watson, that it ultimately was not going to happen in Carolina. And you have to remember that Carolina was one of the main teams that were involved for the last several months in their interest in potentially trading for Deshaun Watson. Those teams included, but we're certainly not limited to, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Denver Broncos, the Carolina Panthers, and the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins really, for the last couple of weeks, with folks that I've spoken to around the league, have been sort of the front runner. It's thought that Deshaun didn't necessarily want to go to Philadelphia, and we know that he has a no trade clause he has to sign off if and when the Houston Texans finally trade him. Denver never really seemed like that great of an option for Deshaun. They may be looking at Aaron Rodgers after this season. Carolina, I don't think that Deshaun ultimately wanted to go there. I think that there was some discussions within the Carolina Panthers organization that would be very difficult to bring Deshaun Watson there, considering the allegations, very serious allegations and 22 lawsuits hanging over his head right now. And now you have the Miami Dolphins, and they're really the last dance partner with the Houston Texans. A Texans team and franchise, very frankly, who should have been picking up the phone and answering these calls from other teams months and months ago. Hindsight is 2020 and what have you, but even when it was extremely clear that Deshaun Watson was in some legal trouble but also was never playing again for the Houston Texans, the Texans and general manager Nick Caserio believed that Deshaun Watson, coming off a fantastic season, as you see right there in the early prime of his career, that they could talk him into sticking around with the Houston Texans. And what we have seen so far this training camp and preseason is really a mockery. Deshaun Watson coming out there and being the 4th quarterback on the depth chart and taking reps as the scout team safety, and then maybe having an injury and going back into the training room, but also maybe not being injured, according to head coach David Culley. And then Nick Caserio and head coach David Culley saying, that he's part of the roster, but not really expanding on anything and not offering any sort of details. So the Houston Texans have been stuck in limbo for some time, and really the last couple of weeks, they have come to understand that Deshaun Watson is not going to play for them anymore. And so that is when they have begun picking up the phone, accepting these phone calls. The Miami Dolphins, again, have had interest for some time, as have other teams. But once you start doing the process of elimination, it does seem that if there's a musical chairs game and the music is stopping, there is one chair here for the Houston Texans and the Miami Dolphins, and it certainly seems like the Dolphins, if a deal is going to get done, and I believe that should a deal get done, it would probably get done before the Tuesday 4 p.m. Eastern deadline for the roster cuts, the 53-man roster. So that's sort of the deadline, not a hard deadline, but a soft deadline, that it would probably be done by then.
But this obviously means for the Miami Dolphins that you're looking to move on from Tua Tagovailoa, a guy that you spent. I mean, he's a first-round pick. He's a high first-round pick. He's one of the cornerstones of this franchise. To bring in a Deshaun Watson who's embroiled in all these legal troubles, I'm trying to understand, why would the Dolphins make this move?
I fully understand what you're saying, Jeremy, and they certainly would make this move if they believe that Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa. I think that most reasonable people would agree that he is. There is also the decision, and this is obviously a football decision. This is not a decision that's steeped in morality, right? If we're being honest, this is a decision that the Dolphins or any other NFL team would be making. Certainly, I say that with the understanding that they're making that decision before the legal process has played out. They would be making that decision saying, okay, we're going to trade for him, and we're probably going to trade a decent amount of capital for him. And even if he is suspended by the league, even if he is placed on the commissioner's exempt list for some period of time, 4, 6, 8, 10 games, something like that, even a whole season, what a team that is trading for Deshaun Watson is saying, we still think that Deshaun Watson, under contract for the next 4 or 5 years, but minus those games, 4 to 10 to 12 to 6, 17 games, is still a better option than whatever the current quarterback that we have, what he will be or what he will become over the next few years. And, the Miami Dolphins, for years and years, if they decide that they're not going to roll with Tua Tagovailoa beyond this season, will be second-guessed, because they did take Tua over Justin Herbert there, picking at 5 when the Chargers picked there at 6. So that's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with over the next several years. But they very clearly see the potential to upgrade at quarterback, and it seems like they are nearing that sort of eventuality. I don't know if that deal is ultimately going to get done because of so much that is going on around Deshaun Watson that we all understand and that we're talking about now. But again, if a team is going to trade for Deshaun, it certainly seems like it would be the Miami Dolphins.
JJ, I come from a European football background, so you have the transfer window and you have deals that are made, and you always have teams that are front runners, and then another team kind of comes in and maybe pips the deal away. You talk about the Dolphins being the front runners here in the talks for Deshaun Watson. Are there any other teams that are interested?
I don't think that there are any other teams that are really in the running. Again, considering Deshaun Watson's no trade clause, he does have control over where he wants to go. He very much is interested in going to a Miami team that has such speed at the receiver position that they have assembled both in free agency and the draft. They have a solid offensive line. They have a coach in Brian Flores. They have a defense that's led by Xavier Howard and Byron Jones that will take the football away from teams and give it back to the offense and give it back to the quarterback, who would then be Deshaun Watson, and then as well as the lifestyle and culture that a team and franchise in South Florida is able to bring a young, wealthy man in Deshaun Watson. So those are all sort of things that Deshaun has certainly been looking at. Again, Denver never really seemed like that one was going to happen. Philadelphia, with all of their draft picks next season, certainly had a solid package that they could have delivered to to the Houston Texans, if the Houston Texans believed that they could have gotten Deshaun Watson to sign off on that. The Carolina Panthers, again, Panthers were interested. Some people within the organization were interested, but not everyone. There was not unanimity there. And what is the asking price? And we get back to that asking price. The report out there, 3 firsts and 2 seconds. That was the asking price that I had heard from league sources back in the spring. So if that's still the asking price today, and if that's what is going to get it done, and that is what Miami gives up to get Deshaun Watson with no conditions. I texted with a source earlier today, a league source who said, there will be people who lose their jobs in Miami if that happens. It is impossible for me to believe that the Miami Dolphins and GM Chris Greer would actually execute that trade, 3 1s and 2 2s with no conditions around them. And so will it ultimately potentially wind up to be somewhat equivalent to 3 1s, be it 2 actual picks that could be 1s if he plays, 70% of the snaps? Could you throw in a player who is of first-round value or of second-round value? I could see those things happening. But to just be straight up, the next 3 first-round picks and 2 2s for Deshaun Watson, where he has 22 lawsuits hanging over him, very serious allegations, FBI, the NFL, the Harris County Police Department, all of these entities looking into him, I cannot imagine that's going to happen.
It just doesn't make sense when you think about it, especially for Dolphins fans. As you mentioned, it's going to be a hard sell for them, especially when the Dolphins have been doing such a good job in terms of rebuilding that franchise and trying to get it back to title contention. Jonathan Jones joining us to talk about potential Deshaun Watson move to the Miami Dolphins. Thank you very much, JJ, for hopping on with us here on HQ.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.